Hello, this is part 2 in predictions for Donald Trump for the years 2021 to 2024. When I made the video on predictions for Trump, I did not know I was going to make a part 2, but I was presented with a question, and in formulating an answer to this question, it brought up several interesting points. One of them is that sometimes we have data, we have this evidence-based platform that we can use to help us give a better answer. And that's the case with this question. And I want to show you how that works. This is a radically new thing because normally in astrology, when we're asked a question, we think about the theory. You know, what does this transit mean? What does this planet in this house mean or whatever? We think about our experiences with it in a sort of vague way. It's difficult to remember, a lot of specific instances. But we live this language. We have this accumulation of awareness. We do not usually have like a specific body of information we can refer to. But increasingly we do. And let me show you how it's extremely helpful for us to better understand what the answer is. It really helps us analyze it better. Okay, so here's the question that came up. Is it likely that Donald Trump will be convicted of crimes in the years 2021, 2022? The reason those years are pointed out is because in the previous video, I showed how Donald Trump has Neptune and Pluto in 13 vibration. Neptune and Pluto are in 13 vibration for 8 years, from 2016 to 2024. But during 2 of those 8 years, 2021 and 2022, that Neptune-Pluto 13 vibration in the sky activates Trump's Neptune-Pluto. So you have this similarity of what's going on in the sky with when he was born for 8 years, but during 2 of those years, you're having a transit, you're having aspects, 13 vibe aspects, from the transiting Neptune-Pluto to the natal Neptune-Pluto. I showed that in the bi-wheel, how the Neptune and Pluto in the 13 vibration in the outer wheel, seesaw back and forth as they go direct and retrograde over his Neptune and Pluto. Okay, so is that effect of the 13 vibration, could it have an effect of landing him in jail, so to speak? Not literally in jail, like most likely these days, but some kind of crime where he gets fined or whatever. Can it happen? Well, let me show you the answer first, and then I'll show you the evidence that we have that this answer is correct. Is it likely? Well, it's definitely possible, and it's increasing likely the more that Donald Trump is defiant. So now he says he will not give a concession speech, that he didn't really lose the election. He's now pushing too far to be safe. Now you may say, if you're a believer in Donald Trump and you support him, he's not going too far, he should stick to what's true. Okay, we can stick to what's true, but the consequences are now going to get severe. So you have to be willing to accept those consequences. If he keeps doing this, he's going to end up in big trouble next year and the year after, period. And we know from that Neptune-Pluto resonance, he's on fire. He is not going quietly into the night. He is going to be full blast on fire about making sure that America follows this vision of the eagle, the proud, the brave, the free, and doesn't cave in and all these kind of things. He's going to be very, very strong about it. And if he continues to think that he can promote his own view of the world without negotiating enough, without compromising enough, without incorporating the opinions of other people, and he just goes off on his own way, he's going to pay a price. Now, he's going to go off on his own way. We know that from the Neptune-Pluto. But we have decisions in life, and we can be passionate, we can be strong, but we can also be civil, we can be accommodating. He needs to change his style or he's getting into more trouble. That will happen. He will also, as I said in the previous video, he's going to have a strong following. He's going to influence things. But is he going to do it more as a cult leader, as more and more people leave him? The more extreme he gets, the more people will leave him. The news media like Fox News and other things that have supported him, a lot of them are gradually going to stop supporting him as much. That's what's going to happen because he's going to get more on fire, more extreme, less compromising. Bottom line, he needs to be passionate, be strong, but be supportive of other people. Don't come across so arrogant. Don't come across so one-sided, defensive, and isolating himself. He'll just end up being a cult leader. Two things are going to happen. He's either going to be like a cult leader, have a very small, very loud, passionate group of followers. That will happen if he doesn't compromise at all. Or he will have a larger following and have more impact and more influence and more support if he's willing to be more accommodating, accepting, and find meeting grounds with others. Those are his two choices. He has no choice about being on fire and passionate about what he's doing. That's going to be stronger than ever. So if Trump, number one, defies nearly all conventions, like not giving a concession speech, things like that, insists that others are breaking the law, it's crooked Hillary and all this stuff. Everybody's crooked. Maybe they are, but he's not. That worked well for him. He became president. He got a lot of support. It will not work in 2021 and 2022. How do I know this? Because the Neptune-Pluto is so extreme. It goes over the top. It's just really crazy extreme. Number three, and he denies that he's ever at fault. Then he could end up being like a cult leader. He's going to have a big impact either way. But from his point of view and his supporters, he will be more effective if he can be more accommodating and be more willing to admit mistakes, things like this. You can be passionate at the same time about what you believe in. Now, in addition to 13 vibe, the other thing that's strong is 43 vibe. And so it's the Neptune, Pluto, and 13 vibe that's so strong in 2021 and 22, and it's Trump's extreme 43 vibe that are the key factors. We can look and see, do we have any research related to crime and 13 vibration, or being an outcast? Do we have any data on this, or 43 vibration? It ends up that we do. And this helps us answer the question very clearly and not just theoretically, not just my opinion, but there's a body of knowledge growing in vibrational astrology. Number one, a study of 6 Mafia leaders with AA data, means data from birth certificate, was done a number of years ago. It's currently on YouTube. It'll be moved over here to Astrology to see it at some point, but it's still available on YouTube right now. And you can go to YouTube and type in something like my name and Mafia crime or something, astrology, and you'll find it. And in that video, I show that the analysis of just these 6 people, 6 Mafia leaders who have an accurate birth time, with just a handful of charts, you can build a model that's consistent with the data. We don't usually do this in astrology. We just say things, Sagittarius travels and Capricorn is business and Aquarius is eccentric. Do we actually refer to data, collecting charts of people with a lot of Aquarius and show that that's true? No, we don't. We don't usually do this. This is one of the radical things in vibrational astrology. We looked at these 6 Mafia leaders. They often have 11 vibe configurations, like 3 or more planets. And guess what one of the planets is? Uranus. Wow, it makes sense. It means low impulse control. When you have Uranus involved with other planets in 11 vibe, you're just like a wild cannon. You can just pow. Low impulse control says it all. So that's a factor that can be involved sometimes with mafia leaders, not always. They can also exhibit tremendous self-restraint and control under tense situations. So we don't want to simplify this, and that's why it does not occur with every mafia leader. But it's one thing to have a hot temper, to be quickly responsive. Can be one aspect of the personality. Very frequently it is, and that's one thing that shows up. What's another thing about mafia leaders? They're big. They're bigger than life, and they think they can do whatever they want, and they have their own little kingdom, that they rule over. So we often see strong 13 vibe with Jupiter involved. Very, very common. These are typical things we see. So people, here's the second paragraph is the key thing. People who live outside the laws of man, whatever constitution or regulations people are living under, people with strong 13 vibe often don't feel that they have to be constrained by it. They follow a natural law or an inner instinct, something else, because 13 is special and beyond the norm. They often feel they don't have to do that. Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to follow these rules? Well, you'll get in trouble, you'll go to jail, you'll pay fine. Well, I don't have to. That's the 13 vibe attitude. We see this in mafia leaders. We see it in gurus who follow a law outside the usual spectrum. See, they have something in common. And we did some research on gurus as well, which I haven't presented publicly, except one time I presented it at a Vedic conference, some of the results. I'm going to extract out that part of what I presented at the Vedic conference and make a video about this exciting research on results of gurus. I also mentioned it a little bit, refer to it a little bit in the videos on spiritual astrology. But it's a formal study where I take only the people that I could find who are gurus. There's no selection bias. Look at all their charts. And what do we see that they have in common? 13 vibe. And also more recently, I didn't know the importance of it when I did that study, 43 vibe. Let me show you one example of that. Here is the birth chart of Amrit Desai, popular American guru. He had a strong following in Pennsylvania, and then he got into some difficulty because he was having romantic and sexual affairs with some of his devotees, and the whole movement kind of blew up, and then he developed a smaller movement in Florida. But for a period of time, he was a very popular guru. He still has some popularity. And people refer to him as a guru. So here's his birth chart. It's time was given by him. And here's the 13 vibe with Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Venus all within 11 degrees. So he has 4 planets in 11 vibration, and you'll notice the moon coming in and trining 3 of them, Saturn, Uranus, Venus. The Pluto is trining the Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. The Saturn, Uranus are conjunct with a 3-minute orb in the middle of this whole thing. And when you look at the midpoint structures, you'll see that the Saturn and Uranus are at Moon-Pluto midpoint, about a half a degree orb. So this Saturn and Uranus at 7 Capricorn is right in between the Moon and Pluto at 4 and 9 Virgo. So it's actually a weak grand trine with Saturn and Uranus right in the middle. And a lot of his emphasis is on detoxing, getting out of your stuff, lifting yourself out of this, overcoming all these psychological hang-up things to do 13 vibration, to lift yourself out of it. Also, you notice the Venus, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the thing that blew up his movement at one point was romantic and sexual things. Venus, Uranus is often related to sexuality. He also is involved in a lot of musical production now with chanting and things like that. Now you look at his 43 vibration, and he has 3 planets within 1 degree. Uranus and Pluto, 5 minutes apart, almost exact. With Mercury, 1 degree, 3 planets within 1 degree. And then Jupiter is 10 degrees from the Uranus-Pluto. The whole thing spreads 10 degrees. Jupiter. Whole thing spreads 9.5 degrees. 4 planets within 9.5 degrees, 3 of them within 1 degree. Mercury, Uranus, Pluto is the tightest part of it. Strong ideas about. 43 is about disturbing your connection to mundane human identification and sending it out somewhere else. So that's exactly what he's into, with a lot of emphasis on the teachings, the philosophy, the way of understanding Mercury, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto. It's what it's all about. So you see this involved in people like this. Just one example to illustrate. At some point I'll make a video showing all the data collected, exactly how the results come up. And now what I'm doing also is I'm sometimes running control groups, make a control group in the software and show that these configurations really do stand out. And we build models that fit the data. No attempt to, like, quote, prove something, but just build a solid model that actually fits the data and fits our theory. And over time, it becomes more and more and more supported by the research because it works. And if it works, future research will confirm that it works. Okay, so what do we know? We know that if we look at gurus who make their own rules or follow the rules of the divine or something else, and also mafia leaders, we can look at the charts of Joe Adonis, for example. His 13 vibration, as often occurs, he's got 3 planets within 10 degrees, Mercury, Moon, Jupiter. Other configurations involving Jupiter. He also has, very interestingly, Venus, Uranus, and the Moon, sextile trine. He takes on this name Joe Adonis because he thinks of himself as being like the Greek god Adonis. He thinks he's so handsome, and apparently the story is evidently he had a girlfriend and thought of him as like an Adonis type. And the story, supposedly he would get, well, not supposedly, it's documented, he would stand in front of the mirror combing his hair. And there's that Moon, Venus, Uranus, 13 vibration, that I'm engaged in something special with my rhythm, with my sexuality, with my excitability. So anyway, and the very strong Jupiter involved in several configurations in 13 vibe. So these are the kinds of things that we see. So what does it tell us related to our question? Let's get back to our question. Can Donald Trump end up in trouble, in legal problems? Absolutely. We know that mafia leaders and other people who've had legal problems, who stepped outside the bounds of what's normal and acceptable, right? A lot of people, we all step outside the bounds of what's normal and acceptable at times. If you have a lot of 13 vibration, 43 vibration sometimes also inclines to this as well. That's what often happens. Trump is not afraid to step outside the bounds. We know that, but when you look at it astrologically, it's so clear, so strong what's going on. And let me show you a more dramatic example of this. In this bottom paragraph, the guru Rajneesh, who was some people would say a cult leader. Now, cult leader has a negative connotation. You may be a devotee or have benefited tremendously from the teachings of Rajneesh. He was a leader of a relatively small group. I mean, he had a big ashram and a lot of devotees there, but in the long run, it's not a major movement like, Judaism or Islam or Catholicism or something. It remained a small New Age kind of movement, we could call it. And his 43 vibration chart reminds us a lot of Trump. Let's look at it. Here is Rajneesh's 43 vibration. Wow. Look at this kite. Oh my gosh. Sun, Neptune, very tightly conjunct opposition Mars with Venus and Jupiter making the grand trine. And by the way, he drove these fancy cars. He had like dozens of these Mercedes Benzes or Rolls Royces, something like that. Venus, Jupiter. We can do the time adjust to see how sensitive it is to the birth time. I'll go 1 hour earlier. It's still there. I'll go 2 hours earlier. The trine part's getting weak. If I go another hour earlier, it's still there. So it's lasting several hours, maybe 6-7 hours it's there. And I go after the time he's born, and a few hours after he's born it starts to weaken. So it's not there for 10 or 15 minutes because he only has A data. It's there for at least a few hours. He was born with this. And look at all those trines. And then when we look at Donald Trump, 43 vibration, it kind of reminds us, just the fact that it's a strong configuration. I think Rajneesh's is even more dramatic. But one of the things you can overlook with Trump is that Mars, Pluto, Moon, and Neptune are all at the same degree, 11 degrees. And the Sun aspecting the Mars, Pluto, Venus aspecting the Moon and Neptune, with these hard aspects coming in. My point is this. Did Rajneesh use his 43 vibration to step outside the bounds of normal belief systems, develop an identification with, you could call it like a God complex, or a feeling of being chosen, or a feeling of having a special mission, and having that kind of dispensation or purpose. Doesn't have to be religious or spiritual, just a sense of unique identity. Did that enable him to step outside the bounds of law and have serious legal action taken against him? Yes. And some people would label him a cult leader. So we have the data, and this is from a research study on just a handful of people who have the title of guru, as Rajneesh did, that what is in their charts, what developed, what happened. So we get mafia leaders, gurus, and Donald Trump has the same mold in some ways. And with this increased 13 vibration coming up in the next 2 years, is it possible, the question was, is it possible that he could end up in serious legal trouble? Well, we know from people who have the similar emphasis on the same vibrations, yes, it can happen. And even though his Neptune-Pluto is in such strong resonance with what's going on and increases his popularity, your popularity can make you notorious and controversial, as was the case for Rajneesh. A similar thing could happen to Trump. So if he's smart, he is going to cool off the little criticisms that he has of everybody else, focus on the important points related to making America free and dynamic and healthy. He's got some theories about that, some beliefs. He can espouse that. He can be a great leader. But if he continues to ostracize himself by not being willing to support others, to respect others who disagree with him, It worked for him very well. He became president and was able to get some things done that he wanted to get done. But with this Neptune and Pluto going into overdrive and pushing and blowing it out, because that Neptune and Pluto moves right on his Neptune and Pluto, it's too extreme. It's too hot. So these extremely powerful patterns push you to extremes. And you don't want to fight the energy. He needs to be extreme. What you also want to do is not let that energy become so unbalanced and overpower everything else in life. And when you push your energy system onto other people and do not help them express what's unique to them and what their mission is and what their truth is, then you get into big, serious problems. And we're starting to see that become more of an issue with Trump. So he's going to have a huge impact in the coming years, even though it's pretty clear now he won't be president. I don't know what he'll be doing, but he's going to have a huge impact. As long as he's healthy and alive and functioning, he'll have huge impact. And the best thing for him is to not discount everybody else, and then he will have be able to reach more people and succeed more. So let's go back to our PowerPoint and wrap this up. So these are the conclusions. And let me read this second paragraph because it's really important. There are those who believe in Rajneesh as a spiritual leader, and there are those who believe in Donald Trump as a world leader. I am not here to question your personal judgment and your personal assessment. If that's what you believe, fine. If you think just the opposite, fine. I'm not here to argue about how we assess and judge these kind of things. I'm here to just let you know what the dynamics are. These astrological cosmic dynamics are real and what the consequences are. Rajneesh ended up in legal trouble. Can Trump end up in legal trouble with the very similar emphasis on the same configurations that two gurus got in trouble with, that some mafia leaders got in trouble with, and some of them became ostracized and, like cult leaders? Can it happen? Absolutely. And for Donald Trump and for those who, for his family and friends and for those who support his ideas, all he needs to do is to start doing something else besides this 13 and 43 vibration and also his 11 vibration, you're fired attitude, and embrace other things, see other points of view, be more supportive about other things, be willing to just, almost, like, let's use the word acknowledge when things could have been done better. All these kind of things will tremendously help his movement and will help him personally with his health, his happiness, and his prosperity. So it's up to him. He's at a very critical point. We'll see which way he goes. The astrology tells me what we need to do to make things work. It does not tell me what people will do. It tells me what they need to do. So the writing is on the wall. It's very clear. We'll see what he does. And if he doesn't be more accommodating and supporting of other people, I predict he's going to be running into some real serious trouble in every area of his life. And some of the legal actions against him will stick. And if he opens up, becomes more supportive of different things, that's not likely to happen. The legal allegations will be there. They won't stick. And he'll have a much broader support system behind him and also greater success in his personal relationships as well. So simple when you see it astrologically. But when you're in the midst of something, it's not always so clear. Okay, my friends, well, that's it. And again, one of my main points was that we have data and information that we can go to and not just rely on the theory. Also, I've got a lot of stuff I haven't presented yet, like the research on the gurus and stuff it'll all be coming out as we continue with other research as well. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.